back to Hebrews, and this again is the theme of the whole book, that Jesus has made everything different. You can't go back to the way that is familiar from the Old Testament. And we're making our way through chapter 2 now. And as we've moved toward the end of the chapter, I'm going to pick it up here. For it is fitting that he, for whom and by whom all things exist, in bringing many sons to glory, should make the founder of their salvation complete through suffering. For he who sanctifies and those who are sanctified all have one source. That is why he is not ashamed to call them brothers, saying, I will tell of your name to my brothers. In the midst of the congregation, I will sing your praise. So we got through this last week, and we're getting into the Soteriology, the salvation, and how salvation is applied to us from the theological perspective of the writer of the book of Hebrews. And he's beginning here by pointing out that Jesus' suffering is what's important in all of this, and that Jesus, as the founder, had that perfection through suffering. He was completed. Everything was completed through his suffering. Our sanctification is through him, and he is not ashamed to call us brothers. So he is one of us, we are one of him, but he is also not one of us, and is something that we are not. He's making both points. Jesus is, and he will talk about this more as he gets further into this, an intermediary. He's between God and man. He is both God and man. And that's the point he's going to be making. Here he's quoting again from Psalms. I will tell of your name to my brothers in the midst of the congregation. I will praise you, simply to make the point that we are brothers with Christ. Christ is human in the way that we're human. He's already spent the first chapter and a half explaining how Jesus is not human, how he is not an angel, how he is, in essence, God. And now he's turned to the human side. So after saying that he will tell of your name to my brothers in the midst of the congregation, I will sing your praise, he adds, and again, I will put trust in him. And again, behold, the children God has given me. This is intended again to equate us to him, to make Jesus human, and to show that he has had the same experience that we have. That's going to be his point of emphasis here. Jesus has gone through the same thing we have gone through, and then he will add on to that, because he has gone through it, he knows what we have experienced. He knows what we experience. He can sympathize with us because he has experienced it. So that's the point he's moving toward here. So he's not ashamed to call us brothers. I will tell of your name to my brothers in the midst of the congregation. I will sing your praise. So this is God. This is Jesus speaking back to God just as humans do so. And again, just like humans, I will put my trust in him. And again, behold, I and the children God has given me will put our trust in him, in God the Father. So, verse 13 comes from the book of Isaiah, Isaiah 8. And he will become a sanctuary and a stone of offense and a rock of stumbling to both houses of Israel, a trap and a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Now, Paul applies this idea of being a rock of offense and a stone of stumbling to Jesus. In the context here, if you actually read above this, and we're going to, here God is the sanctuary and the stone of offense and the rock of stumbling, God the Father. Verse 15, and many shall stumble on it and shall fall and be broken. They shall be snared and taken. Bind up the testimony, seal the teaching among my disciples. And then we get to the quotation. I will wait for the Lord, and this is Isaiah speaking. I will wait for the Lord who is hiding his face from the house of Jacob, and I will hope in him. Behold, I and the children whom the Lord has given me are signs and portents in Israel from the Lord of hosts who dwells on Mount Zion. Here again, we have a reference which is more or less taken for the words that are being used more than the context in which it was used. He's quoting here to make a point in his thought, in his teaching, that is kind of extracted from the way Isaiah was using it, but the idea being the same: put your hope and trust in God the Father. Now, I told you this was going to be a Christmas lesson. Why is this a Christmas lesson? Well, we need to go back a chapter. To kind of get the context of what is going on here, we need to start in chapter 7. So here's what's going on and why Isaiah was making that proclamation. In the days of Ahaz, the son of Jotham, the son of Uzziah, king of Judah. So we're in Judah, we're in Jerusalem, and the king is Ahaz. Ahaz is the king of Judah in Jerusalem. The kingdom has divided, so you've got the northern kingdom of Israel, the southern kingdom of Judah. It's in the days of Ahaz and also of Rezin, the king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, the king of Israel. So these are the characters here. Ahaz is the king of Judah, Rezin is the king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, so Pekah, although he gets called the son of Remaliah a lot more, is the king of Israel, the northern tribes. Rezin and Pekah came up to Jerusalem to wage war against it, but could not yet mount an attack against it. So we have Syria and the northern kingdoms of Israel joining forces to attack Judah, the southern kingdom. Why would Israel attack Judah? And that's the question here. When the house of David was told, so Judah, was told Syria is in league with Ephraim, when Ephraim is the name for the northern kingdoms here, the heart of Ahaz and the heart of his people shook as the trees of the forest shake before the wind. So this is going to be a force that they feel like they can't reckon with. Combination of Syria and the northern tribes attacking them. So they're afraid. And the Lord said to Isaiah, go out to meet Ahaz, you and Shear-Jashub, your son, at the end of the conduit of the upper pool on the highway to the washer's field. So he's sending Isaiah out to talk to the king to encourage him. Now, what's really going on here? Assyria is a separate country from Syria. And Assyria is in the process of trying to take over everything. So they've already become a threat to Syria and Israel. Israel and Syria are joining forces to try to keep Assyria from taking them over. And as part of that process, they want Judah to join up as well, and Judah is resisting. So they want to basically capture Judah so that their strength will be increased enough to maybe thwart Assyria taking them over. Here's what Isaiah is supposed to do. Say to the king, be careful, be quiet, do not fear, and do not let your heart be faint because of these two smoldering stumps of firebrands at the fierce anger of Rezin and Syria and the son of Remaliah, the king of Israel. Thus says the Lord, it shall not stand, it shall not come to pass. They're not going to be able to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. For the head of Syria is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is Rezin. And within 65 years, Ephraim, the northern kingdom, will be shattered from being a people. So here's a prophecy that Israel will fall. The northern kingdoms will fall. He goes on. Again, he spoke to Ahaz. Ask a sign of the Lord your God. Let it be deep as Sheol or high as heaven. So Isaiah says, You need to trust the Lord in this, and the Lord will give you a sign that this is the truth. He will back up what he's saying. So just ask for a sign. Make it hard, as deep as hell or as high as heaven, but make it a hard sign. And because Ahaz is such a wonderful follower of God, he says, I will not ask. I will not put the Lord to the test. Now, if you know anything about Ahaz, that was not really his attitude. He's being something we call self-righteous here. Not truly righteous, but self-righteous. But he says, I'm not going to put the Lord to the test. And Isaiah says, well, okay, have it your way. God's going to give you a sign anyway. Verse 14. Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. He'll come up with something. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. He shall eat curds and honey when he knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good. For before the boy knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land the two kings you dread will be deserted. The Lord will bring upon you and upon your people and upon your father's house such days as have not come since the day that Ephraim departed from Judah, when the kingdom split, and that will be the king of Assyria. God is going to allow the king of Assyria to solve this problem by taking care of Syria and Israel. And that's the promise. And the sign is that the virgin, and literally it doesn't say the virgin, it says this virgin. Isaiah was pointing at someone when he said this. This virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. It was a very direct prophecy. And then he gives this proclamation about eating curds and honey. And if you read the rest of this chapter, you see why he was eating curds and honey. Curds is, in essence, sour milk. And it's not your first choice. And honey is something you don't really have to work for. What they're not eating is what you have to notice here. They're not eating bread. They're not eating anything made out of crops, because the idea is all the crops are going to be destroyed. There won't be anything to eat. So you're going to have to go back to going out and finding anything that you can to eat. And what's left is sour milk and honey that you can find in the woods. So that's the idea here. That's the promise. That even Judah is going to have some hard times because of this. There's going to be a conflict, and they're going to not have enough to eat because of it. Chapter 8. Then the Lord said to me, the Lord said to Isaiah, take a large tablet and write on it in common characters belonging to Mahir Shalah Hashbaz. And we're about to find out who that is. And I went to the prophetess, and she conceived. So when he says I went, he's talking about sexually. I went to the prophetess. The prophetess is his wife, Isaiah's wife. And she conceived and bore a son. Then the Lord said to me, call his name Mahir Shalah Hashbaz. For before the boy knows how to cry, my father or my mother, the wealth of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria will be carried away before the king of Assyria. So this is in essence the same prophecy that we just saw in chapter 7. This woman is conceiving, having a son, and calling, in this case, we're calling his name Mahir Shalah Hashbaz, which has a very definite meaning. This is what that means. Quickly the plunder, it hurries the loot, or quick to the plunder, swift to the spoil. In other words, the son represents what Assyria is going to do to Syria and northern tribes. He's going to come in and he's going to plunder and spoil everything, and that will also include Judah. That's why they won't have any crops. So Assyria is going to come in and take care of this problem in this way. The Lord spoke to me again. Because this people has refused the waters of Shiloah, that flow gently, and rejoice over Reason and the sum of Remaliah, therefore, behold, the Lord is bringing up against them the waters of the river, mighty and many, the king of Assyria in all his glory, and it will rise over its channels and go over all its banks, and it will sweep on into Judah. It will overflow and pass on, reaching even to the neck, and its outspread wings will fill the breadth of your land, O Emmanuel. All of this is going to spill over into Judah, and the king of Assyria is going to come into Judah and judge Judah, but not to the end, only up to the neck. So Judah will remain. That is because of Emmanuel, which is not necessarily a name, it's also a statement. Because Emmanuel means God with us. God is with us directly. Judah does not completely fall because God is still with Judah. God is with us. Now, here we're seeing a connection between chapter 7 and chapter 8. We see the birth of a child whose name is supposed to be Emmanuel in chapter 7, but in chapter 8, it's a different name, but the idea is still the same. God is with us. For the Lord spoke thus to me with his strong hand upon me, and warned me not to walk the way of this people, saying, do not call conspiracy all that this people calls conspiracy, and do not fear what they fear, nor be in dread. But the Lord of hosts, him you shall honor as holy. Let him be your fear, and let him be your dread, and he will become a sanctuary and a stone of offense and a rock of stumbling to both houses of Israel. So here's what I was talking about before. We're talking about the Lord of hosts, who is the sanctuary, the stone of offense, and the rock of stumbling to both houses of Israel. A trap and a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Many shall stumble on it. They shall fall and be broken. They shall be snared and taken. Bind up the testimony, the prophecy, and the things that I have witnessed to you. Seal the teaching among my followers, my disciples. I will wait for the Lord, who is hiding his face from the house of Jacob, and I will hope in him. Behold, I and the children whom the Lord has given me are signs and portents in Israel from the Lord of hosts who dwells on Mount Zion. So we are back to the quotation from Hebrews. I will put my trust in him, and again, from the same place, behold, I and the children God has given me. And this is being applied to Jesus. Jesus is putting his trust in the Father, and the children that God has given him also are doing the same. We are God's children. We are Jesus's children in this example. Here's what we need to see in this that I wanted you to be aware of, and I've probably shown you this before, but I want to go back through it again. Matthew chapter 1. She will bear a son, she being Mary, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet Isaiah. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which means God is with us, God with us. So what is she supposed to name Jesus? They shall call his name? Which is it? We're seeing the same kind of thing here that we saw in Isaiah. In one place it's Emmanuel, in another place it's Mahir Shalal Hashbaz. But we're talking about the same child. Because what was predicted in the chapter 7 in Isaiah was that Isaiah's wife, who he was pointing to at the time, would conceive and have a son, who would be representative of God being with you. Matthew is saying that Isaiah, the prophecy in Isaiah applied to Jesus. A virgin will conceive and bear a son. Now, who went to talk to the king? You remember back in chapter 7 who was going to go talk to the king? Isaiah and his first son. So what does that mean about Isaiah's wife?
She wasn't a virgin.
She wasn't a virgin. What we read there is, therefore the Lord himself shall bear you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son. But she obviously wasn't a virgin, even though she did conceive and have another son. If you read the Masoretic text, the Hebrew text, if you read the Dead Sea Scrolls version of Isaiah that we have from the oldest Hebrew text, you will see that the word virgin is not there in the Hebrew. The word in Hebrew is alma, which simply means a young woman. So if Isaiah pointed to his wife and said, "This young woman will conceive," that makes complete sense. She's not a virgin. She is a young woman. And that's what it says in Hebrew. But for some reason, when the Septuagint translators came along and translated the Hebrew into Greek, which is what Matthew and the writer of the book of Hebrews were reading, they translated it the Greek word parthenos, which is very technical and means a virgin. So what they read in the Greek Septuagint said virgin. A virgin will conceive, even though the original Hebrew didn't. So here we have another example of where the Septuagint says one thing, and that's what we have given to us in the New Testament. But it's not what was in the original Hebrew text. Which one is the Word of God? If it's a prophecy about a virgin conceiving in the New Testament from the Septuagint, that's what we're going with. But that's not what the original said. And that's not what Isaiah did, obviously. Now, the point there is, if Matthew read the original Bible, the original Old Testament, he wouldn't have had this prophecy. This prophecy would not have existed that he could have applied to Jesus, that a virgin, Mary, would conceive. It only works with the Septuagint. So this is just a crucial thing to understand, a crucial thing to know. Okay, so we're going to continue on here, and I'll go ahead and read these next few verses because they're pointing us in the direction of what Jesus did for us. That's the next discussion. Since therefore the children share in flesh and blood, he himself likewise partook of the same things, that through death he might destroy the one who has the power of death, that is, the devil, and deliver all those who through fear of death were subject to lifelong slavery. So here he's talking about us being the children, Jesus' children, and God's children, and all of those children, Jesus and us, share in flesh and blood. Jesus and us share the same thing. He partook of the same things that we partook of, that through death he might destroy the one who has the power of death. And then verse 15, he comes back to later. So remember we saw this. He's delivering all those who through fear of death were subject to lifelong slavery. We are delivered from a fear of death. That is what Jesus does for us. He takes away our fear of death. And that comes up later on. For surely it is not angels that he helps, but he helps the offspring of Abraham. So here he's going to wrap up that whole topic about angels. Jesus didn't come to save the angels. Why? Angels don't need to be saved. Therefore, he had to be made like his brothers in every respect, so that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in the service of God to make propitiation for the sins of the people, because he himself suffered when tempted. He is able to help those who are being tempted. And we'll dig into some of this next week and probably get to chapter 3.